For those of you that are joining us through the webcast, just know that your slides and your handouts is a link below where you access the webcast. So please print those out so that you can follow along. Again, we will start in 1 minute. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn Parenting Seminar, Family Fitness Equals Family Fun. We are very excited to have those of you joining us here in Building 31, as well as those that are joining us through the webcast. We're very excited about offering the Family Fitness Equals Family Fun seminar because here at NIH we have a huge wellness initiative that you've probably noticed throughout the services that we have here at NIH. We're also going to talk about what some of those resources are for you, but we're also going to talk about why it's important for you and your children to get up, get out, and get active. We're very excited to have Brenda Salas here today to talk with us about the importance of being active and those ideas and helping you and your child to get wellness, physical fit. Okay, Brenda?
All right. Thank you so much, Tanya. Hi, everyone. Thank you for sharing your lunch hour to talk about a subject that I am passionate about, and that's, first of all, healthy citizens and particularly healthy children. So we do have a crisis that's going on in this country, and it's a crisis that affects all ages and all demographics. The crisis is an obesity epidemic, and we do need to just look at those numbers. Every year, more than 300,000 people die from complications or chronic disease directly associated with obesity. And in a way, that's sobering when you think about the number of countries that have that many people die because there's not enough food. We have that many people dying because they're eating too much and their lifestyles are what we would consider an unhealthy lifestyle. So just to give you the big picture and then to talk specifically about family fitness and about childhood obesity and the epidemic that's going on. So to put this in perspective, in 1982, which sounds like a long time ago, but you know, just about 28 years ago, what percentage of children between the ages of 6 and 14 were considered overweight and obesity? Any guesses out there? Okay, that's high. It was actually only 4%. Now let's fast forward what has happened in 28 years, which is not a long time. In a little more than 2 decades, almost 3 decades, that number has escalated to greater than 30% in a very, very, very short amount of time. We can look at the lifestyle circumstances that have contributed to that, and that would be our lifestyle in general. When I was 6 to 14, so I'm going to sound really old. When I was 6 to 14, we had one telephone in the house, and it was attached to the kitchen wall. And I grew up with 2 sisters, and we had a party line. So if I was expecting a call and I didn't get to the phone first, beating my sisters running down the stairs from the top floor, then I missed a phone call that might have been very important. We had one television in our house, and parents controlled it. There was no such thing as a remote. Does it sound familiar? Am I really old? Okay, so if we wanted to change the channels, we did that at the commercial breaks. When we went grocery shopping and came home, it was our job to open the garage door by hand. There was no remote garage door. Those were what we consider the activities of daily living when I was 6 to 14, and those rates of obesity were only 4% or even less at that time. Then when I was in college, Word processors just came out. Can you imagine? I was still using a typewriter to do my term papers. Just those little amounts of energy and activity burned calories. So we're talking about something called NEAT. And the question I pose is, how neat are our children? The non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the number of calories, i.e. energy, that's used in doing normal everyday stuff. Let's look at the normal everyday stuff of today's 6 to 14-year-olds and even younger. What is their day like? They're called the C generation, couch potato, or the S population, sitting all the time. Most of their activities involve sitting. So if we look at from when they wake up in the morning and that commute to school, whether it's school bus or in a carpool or with parent, to when they get in the classroom where PE is now maybe twice a week, depending on the school system or the school area. And then we look at their commute home and their time spent doing electronic activities. They truly are the S generation. So their NEAT, their non-exercise activity thermogenesis, looks very, very different than what it does today. And so what does this mean? The lifestyles have changed dramatically. Well, how does this translate to obesity in our children? Any ideas? What's going along with the NEAT being decreased and the ADLs being decreased? Okay, so people are eating while they're sitting, and what else is going on? Is your microphone on?
Yeah. Well, then you don't have a chance to burn it off, obviously, when you're sitting. But I think also with sitting in front of these electronic things, people tend to have snacks out there.
You're absolutely right. In fact, research completely supports that. Not only are they eating more snacks, but if they're eating a meal, and by the way, more than 50% of families who happen to eat dinner together or meals together are having the television on at the same time. You consume more when you're watching television, or your attention is a little bit divided between just the meal time. So right, that's exactly right. So they're eating more calories. What about fast food? We are the fast food nation. Why is that? What's something that we're all lacking? Time and money. Now it's kind of the same thing, right? So we can pull into a fast food place and get something that's really, really economical almost instantaneously. So it works in our busy schedules. What are we now #1 in? The Washington, D.C. metro area. And we're smack dab in the middle of it. We now are #1, traffic. Can you believe we beat out L.A.? Have you been to LA? It's a non-stop rush hour. We spend more than 70 hours a year just stuck in our cars in traffic jams. So our commutes are longer. Guess what we rate #2 in the country in? Work days. How long is our workday now? An average of 9.2 hours. So not only we, and primarily it's women who are doing the caregiver, not all the time, but there's a majority of women in here too. So look at our days. The challenge is on. How do we get our kids outside and playing? And there are obstacles to that. What are the neighborhoods like now? It used to be everyone watched everyone's children, and we were all playing together, and I could run to Mrs. Johnson's house, and she would tell my mother where I was. Well, those days are gone because we are working. We're out of the house. Neighborhoods have changed. Traffic is bad. We have to look at the safety factor too. So a lot of things have come into this very complicated situation that we see in less than 3 decades, this obesity. So what is the future going to hold? Well, the future is about prevention, and prevention is really the key, because what's happening to these 6 to 14-year-olds who are developing overweight, obesity, and even some chronic disease associated with it, like diabetes type 2? What is the quality of their life when they're 22? When they're 32, they're having a heart attack at 32. They're having hypertension and unmanageable levels of cholesterol. So it's really devastating. Diabetes type 2 used to be called what? Adult onset. There was a reason. Who got it? Adults. Well, we now see 6 and 7-year-olds who are not born with juvenile onset diabetes, but they have in fact developed diabetes type 2. 90 to 95% of the cases of diabetes type 2 directly from lifestyle, which means it's completely preventable. To see a 7-year-old develop diabetes type 2 because of their lifestyle, a lot of that is socioeconomic. I do work with groups that live in subsidized housing communities, and I do some work with the children there, launching a Kids Fit program, and I do have 6 and 7-year-olds, and their lifestyles are very different. The caregivers, in many cases not the parents, would be grandparents or aunts. Parents are non-existent or they're incarcerated. There is something called a very low health efficacy in education. Health literacy is what we're calling it. So we're seeing these children who are living on fast food and fake juices and sodas. One of my children takes 8 sodas a day in his lunch. Can you imagine? 7 years old and has developed diabetes type 2. So there are many, many factors that go into this. I'm glad that you're here. This is a group that can help share the information with other populations that don't have as much health literacy as you do. So let's go ahead and kick off this presentation and look at some things that we can do. What we are going to cover is the importance of physical activity, not just for your kids. It is a family affair. And when it becomes a family affair, it really becomes fun. It really is a way to bring sort of these disconnected portions of the family or components of the family. We have a teen Facebooking. We have preteen on video games. We have parents doing their own thing. So the family fitness time becomes a way to have a connection, and research bears that out. We're going to look at physical activity guidelines for both children and for adults. We're going to look at components of exercise and examples of activities. And the good news is, what you think of exercise doesn't have to be exercise. That's a really good piece of news for many, many people. How to encourage exercise at home, and some family fitness resources at the end. So why is exercise important for you and your kids? We did talk about from 4% to above 30% in just 28 years for ages 6 to 14 with the obesity epidemic. That, if anything, that should stop us all in our tracks. It's going to lower the risk of obesity. So I want to ask you, when I say obesity, what comes up in your mind? I say obese and you think fat. Well, I have clients and patients who are 140 pounds and I have to tell them they're obese. They're 140 pounds. The definition of obesity has changed. It doesn't correlate directly to scale weight. What we look at is the amount of fat, adipose tissue versus lean tissue, and we look at the risk of chronic disease associated with certain numbers. We look at waist girth. For a male, 40 inches, obese. For a female, 35 inches, obese. Why are we looking at waist as a girth as an indicator of chronic disease risk? What do we see statistically with girth here? Heart disease. Diabetes type 2. Certain cancers. So it's all about prolonging life and making it a healthy life throughout the lifespan. We also look at things such as BMI. BMI is a really kind of down and dirty look at mass and height, but that can give us information as well. But waist girth is a really good indicator. Another indicator would be body composition, doing skin fold testing or something like that. Your fitness center here probably can do that for you, I would imagine. Most fitness centers have that. So that's something that you would really want to have done, because that can tell you as well. So it really doesn't have anything to do with scale weight. Certainly we may see a correlation with a high weight on the scale, but it has to do with waist girth primarily. Maryland has one of the highest numbers. We're 26.2, and I suspect the number's even going higher when we look at all the indicators. Now, the trouble with getting the information is that we get it primarily from the WIC program. Pediatricians don't have to report statistics on anyone outside of WIC programs. So we are looking at a specific population on this. But I think we can extrapolate and say most of the population, at least those are the indicators that we see. Physical exercise. I just read an article this morning about stress. What are the implications of stress? I read it in Scientific American Mind, this month's version of it. Yes? Microphone on.
Well, stress is related to quite a number of diseases. And
Absolutely.
And it can also agitate something that you already have.
Absolutely. Do you want to talk about the link with cortisol as well, in terms of girth?
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so there's another component to that. So cortisol rises as a result of our body's response to stress, and that can have a whole cascade of metabolic consequences. One of them is prediabetes or insulin resistance, and that is across the lifespan. It's not just harried type A adults. It's our children too. Is it safe to say that children are stressed today? I think it is. And what are those factors? One factor may be that they're not getting enough physical exercise, because physical exercise is going to help to metabolize many of those hormones that are flowing in response to stress. So for everyone, it's going to help reduce the symptoms of anxiety and depression. We're looking at ADLs. We want to be healthy and functional and have a good quality of life throughout the lifespan. We don't want to have a 12-year-old that is breathless climbing stairs. We don't want to have a 50-year-old that's breathless climbing stairs. What kind of quality of life is that? Right? We want to be healthy and vital and be able to take stairs when we need to into the 80s. Our bodies can do it. It's how we take care of ourselves now. Okay, so let's take a look at this. How often are your kids exercising now? Well, statistics say about 1/3 are not getting, and this would be adolescents, so that's a really specific group. Adolescents are all really into their social kind of circles and Facebook and that kind of thing, and they have a great deal of homework because we're looking at middle school and high school. So this is a specific population, 1/3 of them. The other 2/3, how are they getting it? Probably in organized sports. 10% are completely inactive. There's no recreation, there's no bowling, there's no walking the dog. And the question would be, looking at your child and the age group they're in, what is holding your child back? And we'll do some brainstorming about the different age groups. Then we have to look at this. How often are you exercising? So 60% of adults are not exercising regularly. Well, there's a couple of things that may throw this off. First of all, we have to define exercise and we have to define regularly. So exercise is really accumulating 30 minutes or more 5 days a week. That is the recommendation for health.
The question is, just walking at a slow pace, is that considered valuable versus jogging or walking very fast?
Well, it's a really great question and very specific one. Walking, did you say casually?
Walking sort of casually without like trying to speed up and do that arm thing.
Walking casually is better than not walking.
Yeah.
Walking briskly is better than walking casually. Jogging is better than walking briskly. Okay. The question is, which will you do? So let's find the one you will do, because it's better than not doing it.
Okay.
So, and of course we would have to factor in what's your goals, but in terms of getting the most health benefits out of walking, walking is a great way to go. It's going to help to promote bone density across the lifespan, and I do want to talk about osteoporosis in children. We're seeing it. When I say osteoporosis, what vision do you have? Old ladies. We're now seeing 20-year-olds with osteoporosis, and now we're seeing teens because they're not getting enough vitamin D. And we don't do bone density screenings on teens, but we are now doing them on females and 20 if there's family history. That's a latest change. So we really have to look at this. Otherwise, baselines are 50 for females and 60 for males. The numbers are changing this fast. There are going to be more changes this year. Okay, so walking, good for everyone. It's the most functional exercise and something we need to do across the lifespan. Agreed? Yeah, okay, so walking is good, but it would depend on your goals. If you're walking to reduce body fat, or are you walking for better health? Because those are two different goals. Walking for better health may not change how you look physically, but it's going to change how your body works. We're going to have better maintenance of diabetes type 2, if that exists. We're going to have some stress reduction. We're going to have some reduction of or stabilizing of blood pressure and cholesterol levels. So there's some good things to say about walking. But the reality is, if you want to reduce body fat, it's hard work. It is hard work. It requires More of a brisk walk. You have to think of yourself as a New Yorker. Have you been to New York City? How do they walk? Get out of the way or you're walked over, right? That's how we want to walk. If your goal is weight loss and you're choosing that as your form of exercise. Okay. So adults, why are we not exercising? What's going on? We've got an hour a day, don't we? No, we don't, and that's what's holding us back. We've got that commute to work, that commute from work. We have the children's activities to do. We have that longer than normal work day in this area. So there are so many things. And then we get home, and the maid's cleaned the house, hasn't she? And our personal chef has cooked our meal, hasn't he or she? No. And then predominantly the stuff that goes on in the house when we get home from work still falls to the woman. Okay, so for many of us, we're really, really, really challenged in terms of finding time for ourselves. Maybe once the kids go to bed, it's 10 p.m. Do you feel like going to the gym then? We're tired. On top of it, how's our sleep? Not great. We are in a sleep deficit epidemic of that, and there's so many factors. And the irony is it's kind of a big vicious cycle. If we got some exercise in, we could sleep better and we'd feel like exercising. But we're so stressed and we're so fatigued, and finding the time is a challenge. Here's the good news. Does it take a whole hour? Yeah, it does. If your goal is to lose weight. But does it have to be done all at once? That's the good news. You can do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes here. 30 minutes is a baseline for good health. And I want everyone to move their bodies for better health. That's one way we can stem this tide of chronic disease epidemic that we're seeing going on. But predominantly when people come to me as a wellness coach, what do they say? I go, what's your goal? And they don't say better health. They say, lose weight. All right, so the reality is if that's your goal, we can achieve that, but let's get you doing 30 minutes a day, and let's continue to move you through the stages of change and get you to a point where it's realistic and it can be done by you, and that it's, you know, something you look forward to. Too much too soon is the #1 cause of dropout. So if you can do 30 minutes a day, accumulated, think about how you feel if you've done that for several weeks. How do you feel about yourself? Like, yeah, I think I can do this exercise thing. A lot of people come into this with a big L on their forehead. They have really low self-efficacy around the idea of exercise. Loser. I tried Biggest Loser and it didn't work. Well, of course not. Biggest Loser cannot work. Losing weight is like watching paint dry. Could there be a successful show with someone losing a pound a week? No, but you see them losing 20 or 30, right? Okay, so that is not the reality. Or someone said to you, that new program, P90X, really works, and you did it for 90 days and you got really hurt. You're like, oh, it works for everybody else, but it doesn't work for me. Loser, we internalize it. Or someone said, I have this great new diet, it's the cabbage soup diet. Oh, you've heard. It comes cycling around several times a year. And you tried it and you got really sick. And your friend lost 5 pounds. No fair. But we internalize it and we make that about us. So I say none of this is your fault if you've tried an exercise program and it wasn't successful for you, because maybe you were given the wrong impression, the wrong information. 30 minutes a day has great health benefits. If we can move you to more, then you'll begin to see the physiological changes that you want.
Now, if you take the 30 minutes, and you were saying earlier, block it 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, and 10 minutes there, and it equals 30 minutes, are you getting the same value because you aren't getting your heart going as much, are you, when you're doing it in little blocks?
Well, that depends on you, and that's where we apply the I of the FITM. FITM is frequency, intensity, time, and mode. There is a specific intensity. So, again, walking briskly would get you better benefits than strolling. But if you went from being completely sedentary to strolling, that's an improvement there. Right. So we're looking at it as a staircase to get you moving in a progression that makes sense. Right. It all depends on where you start from. So we agree that we're all time challenged. Is that the biggest challenge? Are there any other challenges? Resources? Resources could be an option, although we have some resources now in the home with Wii Fit and Fit TV and programs like that. So maybe that's not so much of an obstacle. I don't like to sweat. Anybody feel that way? No? I got hurt before. I don't want to get hurt again. These are some really common obstacles, and we can work around those. The idea is to be a little reflective. Think about what is holding you back and looking at that and seeing if you can turn that obstacle around. What are some things that you can do around that? But if you could fit 10 minutes 3 times a day with a brisk walk, that is going to do so much good for you. And then think about what you're going to model for the rest of your family. Okay. So let's go on. What do you and your kids do in your leisure time? Tell me some things that you do in your leisure time with your children. So you don't have children? You have children. Yes. So the garden, okay, that's great. I think that's a really wonderful thing. I'll tell you a story. When my husband was growing up, his mother used gardening as a punishment. Made him pull weeds. So when we encourage our children to participate in activities like that, we do it from a perspective that I'm sure you're doing. One of, look at the earth, look at what we're growing, look how we do this together, sustainable, all of that. Fantastic. Anyone else? Any ideas that you could share and others could benefit from?
My kid is only 3 years. I play with him.
You play with him. Can you turn your microphone on and tell us how you play with him?
These toys, sometimes we play catch-catch, running behind each other. He likes to jump, so I like to play with jumping.
Yeah, dad stuff.
Cycling,
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's really, really great. I was thinking of something. Someone came into my office with her 2-year-old. And my office chair is a ball. Have you seen those ball chairs on rollers? Okay, and he walked by my office and he went, ball! And he grabbed the ball because you can remove it, and he's rolling it around the office, and he's being an exuberant 2-year-old, and everyone said, sit down, time out, be quiet. So I'm glad that you're encouraging that kind of boisterous play in our children. Good for you. Okay, so children and adults in the U.S. are spending 25% of our time watching television. Just think, in our challenge of not having any time, if someone gave you 25% more time in a week, what would you do with that time? You wouldn't watch more television, would you? Okay, so here's time. Now we're using TV sometimes like we use food. Why do we use food when we get home? Where's the first place you go? You're like me. You go to the kitchen, and then what do? You open the refrigerator, and it's just kind of our way of making that transition from the work day to the home life. And we use television that way, too. It's our time to be brainless and mindless. And there's a point. I mean, there's a role for that, too. But what often happens, as you pointed out earlier, is as we're watching television, instead of, on every commercial break, getting up and turning the channel, when was the last time you did that? Maybe some of you never. Yeah? Okay. Instead, we just continue to, what if on every commercial break we did something like sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up? Sat on a ball, did ab curls. What if we turned that into kind of an active kind of thing? What would happen? So maybe it's just thinking about the habituation that we've gotten so used to. Television comes on 8 o'clock every Tuesday night to watch Glee. What if, as you're watching Glee, you like the music and you dance? What would your children say? They would laugh, and it would be really funny, and it would be fun, and that's the point of it. So we have to stop thinking necessarily of exercise as this regimen that can only be done in one place, the gym, and look for opportunities throughout our day for exercise. Even now, if I had my way, you would not be seated. During this presentation, we'd be moving. We'd be marching. We'd all have a pedometer on, seeing who could get the most steps during this 45 minutes. That's how I conduct my meetings. What do you think? So silly, but that's the point. You work it in wherever you can, and it just leads to more movement and more movement. Okay, another 40%, as I told you before, watch television while eating dinner, which means we eat more, there's a distraction, and we're still not communicating around the table. The average American watches more than 4 hours of television each day. Where do they find the time? Maybe they're, I know, maybe they're doing it at night, so they're not going to sleep until 1 o'clock. Yikes. And then they have to get up at 6. No wonder. So again, that vicious cycle of not getting good quality sleep. Should we have televisions in our bedroom? No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You keep the bedroom for the 2 S's, and I'll let you figure out what those are. Okay, 9 years, if you live to 65, glued to your TV. 9 years of TV, 9 years of watching Charlie Sheen. What do you think? That's a little too much. Okay, so let's reduce the sedentary activities. How do we do that? We reduce television time for our children, and I do want to share some things with you. What is wrong with electronic play? Truthfully, my children are now 28 and 27. If there was electronic play when they were 4, 6, 8, I understand it. It would have kept them busy, and I could have accomplished more in the house. Right? So there's a role for that. It's making them computer savvy. They're learning how to do everything. All of that is good. It's also a social network. Let's talk about that. What's the research saying now about that being a social network? When we get these teenagers who have been doing Facebook since they were a preteen, it's been around that long, how are they face-to-face? Horrible. They miss the social cueing. They miss the social nuances. They don't understand give and take. They're not good listeners. Even their grammar, etc., is not good. They haven't had the social experience in role playing. So we have to look at that. When they go into the work world and we hire them at 25 and 28, they may miss lots of what we infer because they never learned how to get meaning out of inference. So we've got to look at that, and I would urge you to look at some of the research around that. Also, Dr. Martin Seligman, anyone heard of Dr. Seligman? He's known for work at University of Pennsylvania. He's a positive psychologist. Do you like that? He's not a Pollyanna. He is truly a pessimist, and he got into this because he was doing research and he discovered or came up with the theory of learned helplessness. And then he turned that around to be learned optimism in the dogs that he was doing some testing on. And then his whole body of research has flourished, and now we have something called positive psychology. So you might want to look at that. But Martin Seligman talks about what happens to our children with too much electronic play. And I do want to just share that with you. Okay. He says that play is the best way for children to learn about one another, themselves, and their capabilities, and that rates of depression are significantly lower in children who have less time with electronic play. Having said that, we're not going to do away with our electronics. They definitely have a place. So what is the recommendation for introducing electronic play? How early do you want to introduce that, or how late? Because we certainly don't want our children disadvantaged, because the world is very much an electronic world now. Well, there is a three-step action plan called DIB. Delay, introduce, and be selective. The recommendation by Jane Healy, who's an educational psychologist, author of Your Child's Growing Mind, has studied children's use of computers for years. She's concluded there's no disadvantage if you don't introduce it early. There's no disadvantage. So you may want to follow up on her research, because I don't have the ability to go in depth with you now, but to introduce the electronic play one by one, more electronic play that has social components to it, like a Wii Fit, where they're bowling against a partner. There is some advantage to bowling against themselves on the screen, because they learn a little bit about reflecting back. They watch their, what's it called? When you have your self on the screen, there's a term for it. What is it? It's a me. When you see your me on the Wii, they learn from that. They learn mirroring, and their mirror neurons in their brain fire back as well. And to be selective, you want to make an electronic play plan. You want to incorporate the necessities. A cell phone may be a necessity, right, because you want your child to be able to reach you, but is Facebook a necessity? So you might want to make those decisions for yourself and for your family. Okay, so
excuse, I have
yes.
a question.
Yeah.
Now, my son is 3 years, and my wife and me had a discussion recently regarding the same, when to introduce the video game or computer, because computer and his friends will be having the computer, and he should not feel like he doesn't know, and that should not lead him to some sort of depression, sort of that he is lagging behind of his friends,
right.
and that that may feel like let him feel like he's missing something. So we were discussing what to do. So what do you think, which time should, because when I grown up in India, so like actually I introduced to computer when I was like 18 years, but I can do now good things in the computer, not best, but still I don't know, I mean which time is good for to introducing the computer, and how we should introduce the computer to the kids, because you raised the point, I had this question then.
Yeah. And it's interesting that parents are not having that conversation with a child who's 3 years old. When do we introduce the computer? The computer certainly is the way that we communicate now and the way we do most of our work. So if you're introducing computer to do homework and those kinds of things, if his peers are doing that, in the classroom they're doing that, that's not a problem. The idea is, are they playing? Are they doing the electronic play in substitution of the social play? And there's so many games out there, even Sesame Street games. Can he have the benefit of Sesame Street play in other ways, would be the question. So it's a great question. I encourage you to talk to your pediatrician about it, because your pediatrician has certainly seen other 3-year-olds and knowing what is good for them or not. Great that you're having that discussion, though. Okay, so we want to talk about playing together, and it's playing like he plays with his son to get the heart pumping as much as possible. So what are some fun play things that you can do with your children? Do you have races? Do you have hula hoop contest? Silly stuff. Do you have a water balloon toss and you have to run away from the water balloon?
Also, you could have things like badminton cord in your back.
Absolutely. Some badminton, maybe lacrosse if you're using a ball that isn't hard. Some things that continue. What are some things that you can do that's going to get the heart pumping and introduce fun and play and sort of that exhilarated, I'm tired feeling? Roughhousing, badminton, contest, little fun, low competition. And go to the park and yeah.
Go to the swimming pool.
Go to the swimming pool, absolutely. So what do you do when it's too cold to go to the swimming pool and it's raining outside and you can't go to the park?
Kids run around what we call the circuit in my house, which we happen to have, because it goes from the kitchen to the... My kids do the circuit in my house. We have a kitchen and dining room and living room, and then our foyer all connect, and they literally run laps around it, chasing each other. So,
which is great, and they're doing that alone. Now, if that becomes too much noise and you need them to stop, maybe you could channel that into 10-minute bouts of let's dance with mommy, or let's do something right now, and really get their heart rates up. So again, it can be in 10-minute bouts, or it can be really unstructured like that. So great ideas that you guys have. The guidelines for children are pretty good ones. We want to encourage 60 minutes of activity during the day, and it should incorporate components of aerobic activity, muscle strengthening, and bone strengthening. So what we're saying is to use body weight as the resistance. You don't want to introduce weight training to children under 14. And you'll check with your pediatrician on that. If your child happens to be in a sport like football at the age of 12, some coaches may want to start them on strength training. Have that conversation with your physician, because you don't want to damage the bone, the growth plates in the bone. So 60 minutes. Now the thing about children is, first of all, their attention span is not an hour. of continuous movement. That's just too much. So you want to break it up. Intermittent activity, lots of interval, lots of rest, and looking for signs of dehydration because their ability to cool is not mature yet. So they can quickly overheat. So things like going to the playground, that's so perfect. Swinging on the swings, hanging on the jungle gym, running up the slide, sliding down the slide. Those are the kind of activities that are going to build good bones. And again, when we're talking about osteoporosis, we're beginning to see osteopenia, but we don't really call it that. In children, they're not getting enough vitamin D, and particularly as they become teenagers, are they drinking milk? Not happening anymore. And they're sitting, particularly as they become teenagers because they're doing so much Facebooking and other things. So they're sedentary, they're not getting calcium, they're not getting vitamin D. Those are 3 of the major risk factors for developing osteopenia that goes into osteoporosis. So we want to make sure that they're doing things to promote good bone health. Aerobic activities, so we want to look at fun stuff, fast stuff, quick stuff. Get that heart rate up. Get it up as much as possible. A few weeks ago in the Washington Post, there was a really, again, sobering report on how many more strokes we're seeing in 20-year-olds. 20-year-olds. Because of hypertension, because of lifestyle, and because of a sedentary lifestyle. So we want good heart health. That's absolutely what we want. So having children move and run around for most of that 60 minutes. So a combination of vigorous intensity and moderate intensity, at least 3 days a week, which is challenging if in school they only have PE once a week. So then it does fall on the parent, or to get them in some organized dance program or something where heart rate is going to be elevated. But there are fun, yeah.
Actually, in high school, now I think you only have to take it 1 year or 1 semester. You don't have to take it the whole way through high school, so it's not routine issue.
She said that now in high school they only have to take it 1 year out of their entire high school. That's just, it's a result of budget cuts, not enough hours in the day, where should the focus be in the classroom and in the school day. I understand it, but it's really challenging. It's really challenging. With your younger children, you can have fun jumping rope, skipping, swimming, kite flying. We're getting into March and April where it's really breezy. Walking to school depends on your neighborhood, of course, and how you feel about having your child walk to school. Dancing, freeze tag, rollerblading with appropriate safety equipment, hopscotch, even skateboarding, again, appropriate helmet and that kind of stuff. Muscle strengthening, they're going to get that from their gymnastics, their jumping rope, their hopscotch, their playing on the playground. But climbing trees, okay, so of course there's a safety component there. We want to be careful. But kids climb. Isn't that what they do? They are climbers. Hiking, even rock climbing with appropriate, again, safety precautions when you do that. Again, the bone strengthening falls into that muscle strengthening. So everything that you do for the muscle strengthening is also going to help with bone strengthening because it's impact to the bone. But when we look at stretching, that's a component we don't often think about with our children. You can do some really fun things. There are several, I can think of 3 off the top of my head, books that are yoga for children, and they're so much fun. There's a collection of flashcards. So you don't always have to be the leader. They can draw a card, and it has figures on it, and it tells you what to do, and they're fun, friendly things. There's Babar's Yoga, where he goes into all the yoga poses with all of his elephants. Really cute, and kids have a great time. I've done that with 2-year-olds, and they get it.
Question about yoga. I thought you're sort of standing still when you're doing yoga, or sitting still. I didn't know that you're really moving around that much. So
it depends if you take them through a yoga pose flow. So you can take them through sun salutation. It depends on the age group. When I deal with the younger ones, we do animal yoga. So we pretend we're a lion, we pretend we're a mountain, we're a tree in the breeze. So you can incorporate the movement there while they get the flexibility. For the older ones, and this is where you might benefit as well, it becomes good stress management. Sort of go in and do the deep breathing is really, really helpful. Stability balls, the great big ball I was telling you about. How much fun are those? Kids, it's like a magnet. They see it, they roll around on it. It's really difficult to get hurt. They won't get hurt on it. They roll around on it. They have so much fun. They'll kick it, they'll jump on it. They'll throw it. Stability balls, big round ball. And then you, what can you do with your stability ball? Sit on it, roll on it, ab curls, all kinds of things during the commercials when we're watching television. Okay, now let's talk about you. Physical activity guidelines for adults. We should get, and this is from the U.S. Surgeon General, 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity every week, along with muscle strengthening activities or 2 or more days of the week, along with some flexibility most days of the week. It's like one more thing you have to juggle in your very busy weekend day, right? But again, remember, you can break this up. Multiple times during the day, you can get your stretching in, and you will have fulfilled that. Multiple times during the day, you can sit at your chair and do a little push-up on your desk, or stand up, sit down, do some squats, or stand behind your chair as you're waiting for the computer and do some hip extension. So you will get the benefit. The idea is to minimize the time you sit, maximize the time you're not sitting during your workday.
Now, if you were to do the 2.5 hours all in one day, like you have a weekend day where you have more time, is that as valuable as spreading it out?
Is it as valuable? Well, it may set you up for what we call weekend warrior, where you could injure, and you're not going to see progression. It really is better from a stress management perspective and a weight control perspective that you do it spread out through the week. Okay. We are incredibly efficient, aren't we, during our day? We can do everything. We have our stapler here, and our mouse here, and our phone here, and this here, and here. We have to become less efficient with our bodies. Put the stapler on the next desk. Send your docs to the computer, to the printer in the other end of the room. It's all of those steps during the day. Now, coming up to this floor, we had to take the elevator. Is taking the stairs an option, or are they secured? But you can get into them. Okay. So Anna and I pushed the button to come in the elevator. How many calories did we burn? Less than 2, 1.3. It's been measured. Okay. If we took the stairs, now let's say 6 flights, how many would we have burned? A lot. About 125. Various factors in there, but generally anywhere from 125 to about 150 going up 6 flights of stairs. It's usually about 35 calories per stair flight. Okay, so you have a range there. So do I want 1 calorie? Or do I want 120 calories? Or maybe I go up 3 stairs and I take the next 3 levels up. Right? You can mix it up. But the idea is we've become so habituated. We just got used to, how about where did you park? Now I know parking is kind of an issue around here, yeah. But can you park as far away as you can and maybe take a lap around the building before you come in? When you go shopping, we try to be so effective and efficient and get that place right next, particularly grocery shopping. We have like 10 bags to put in our car. We want to get right next. What if we didn't? What if we just extended the agony of grocery shopping and made multiple trips to our car? We didn't push the cart to our car. What do you think about that? I know, but it's a way, again, to get more activity in a day and less habituated to what we've been doing. All calories count. So it's not just the calories that we use in our 30 minutes of exercise. It's the calories that we use. Actually, NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, can be more than you burn in a 30-minute bout. How many calories did we used to burn walking across to the television, running down to the first floor to answer the phone, opening the garage door by hand in a day? Any guesses? Just doing that stuff was not exercise. Just living the way we had to live in the 60s and early 70s. 500. Can I get a higher bid? 1,000 to 1,200 is the estimate. Okay, so fast forward to today. We're busier than ever. We have all this stuff. We're not burning 1,000 calories a day that we used to burn. So the challenge is we have to fit the time in for exercise. The challenge is we don't have the time. Or we have to be more active in our workplace. All right, drink plenty of water. Very often we get the cue that we're thirsty and we're hungry, and in fact we're just thirsty. So make sure that you're hydrating yourself, and the water is necessary for all kinds of metabolic processes and cardiovascular and strength. Fuel up before you exercise, all right? So you want to eat well and eat healthy, and all of this is in your handout. What can parents do? Be the best role model that you can. Don't smoke. Research does show that. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments. Parent smoking habits greatly increase the risk of their children smoking. It's something like 50% of children who have smoking parents go on to smoke, or at least experiment, and may become addicted at that point. Be active and have a healthy attitude. This is important. We have to be careful how we talk about food and our bodies in front of our children. They're really impressionable, both boys and girls. We are hearing 6-year-olds say, I'm fat. 7-year-olds saying, I can't eat that. And they're picking it up from the media, they're picking it up from television that they're viewing, and they may be picking it up in the home. So just being really careful about how we talk about our bodies and what health means to us. Eat a variety of healthy foods. When children are exposed to all kinds of different foods, they're gonna eat their Brussels sprouts, okay, than if they're not exposed to it. And take an active role in creating a healthy lifestyle for your family. So this is fun. Involve your children in the preparation, involve your children in the shopping. Take them to the store and let them do math with the labels. Figure out what's the percentage of fat, what are the fat calories, what are the fat grams, where does that fit into your diet in the day. You can go to mypyramid.gov for all kinds of information and fun tools for children to use. Getting children motivated. Well, we don't want to make it a punishment. I have a friend who is military, and we were on the treadmill together the other day, and her daughter's birthday is coming up, a big event, and she was going to have a big slumber party, and she said, I'm thinking about not letting her have it because she hasn't lost the 10 pounds I told her to lose since January. So she was using exercise not as an approach goal, but as an avoidance goal, creating lots of tension. If you don't lose weight, I'm going to take this from you. So we don't want to set that up. However effective that may seem to be, we want to do approach goals. If you play 30 minutes outside today, you get 2 bonus points for something. Is it more time on Facebook or whatever you're choosing because you're carefully monitoring that? Whatever is meaningful to that child. Offering positive feedback. You did a really good job playing outside today. I loved it when you ran up the slide. You were really using your legs in a good way. Let them bring friends along, absolutely. Establish a regular routine. So every Monday, Thursday, we're meeting Amy at the park. Let your child be in charge. So what do you want to do today? Anna's my daughter. Anna, what should we do today? Do you want to run outside? Do you want to go swimming? Or what plans do you have? So she picks one of those, or she comes up with her own. And that begins to make the idea of exercise or moving intrinsic rather than me putting it on her. And join in, play. It's fun to be a kid again. Consider it your recess. Thinking outside the box. Is your child into computers and technology? For those older children, there's so much you can do with the GPS even. You can encourage it for a hide and seek or some kind of adventure game outside. You can track fitness online, livestrong.com, presidentschallenge.org. Visit those sites, make that a fun thing for your child to do. And of course, Nintendo, Wii Fit, Xbox, all of those. Bowling. When was the last time you went bowling with your family? Yeah, you'll be surprised at how sore you're going to be if you haven't been bowling in a while. Climbing, going to Sugarloaf Mountain, taking those hikes there and those trails. Skateboarding, again, very, very safely and controlled in that environment. In the DC metro area, we are so lucky. There are so many kids activities. If you look, for instance, in the Washington Post every Friday, they have guidelines for or opportunities for free kids activities throughout the whole weekend. So you can see great parts of DC, explore, go through museums, see some of the houses at the embassy. There are some indoor climbing centers, really fun. Dick's sporting goods stores. Particularly the one at the Rio has a good indoor climbing wall, and they'll work with your child on that. Again, Rock Creek, there's some opportunities there, and the zoo. The zoo is evergreen. It's a great place to go and walk around. And the low cost or free activities, and this is, you know, something that you can look for and you can do with your neighbor. I'm organizing in my neighborhood. April is Earth Month, so I'm organizing a cleanup, and I've invited all the kids to take on a role. And I have one who said to me, "I'm busy that day." She's 7. She doesn't like to clean up. So anyway, I'll give her something to do outside. She can put signs up or whatever. So organize this kind of neighborhood field day, scavenger hunt, Save the Earth Day, somehow to get them outside and moving. And they could become a U.S. Botanic Garden Junior Botanist. It's free. So check that out. That resource is in your packet as well. And there are more, of course. This is an area where we have a lot of walks and runs that families can do, and playing miniature golf, going to the skate parks, etc. So think about, what does your family do together to get fit, and maybe sit down with the family and have a family meeting. What would you like to do? And if they look at their ideas and maybe say, that's a pretty good idea, let's do it. The Let's Move initiative you can visit letsmove.gov for that. It addresses all the various factors that have led to childhood obesity. I get a daily post from letsmove.gov, and I love to say, oh, Michelle emailed me today, because it's Michelle Obama. So it's interesting, all the things that she's doing in the area and around the country to address childhood obesity. And as, of course, her quote is, the physical and emotional health of an entire generation and the security and the economic health and security of our nation is at risk. This could be the first generation that does not live as long as we do. And that's really some scary stuff. So we have to look at what that means to us as a nation as well, not just to the family. Okay, some resources. We Can. That is a program that you have here through NHLBI, and I think Tanya's going to say something about it.
Yes, we would like to thank the National Institutes of Heart, Lung, and Blood for their parent resource guide, which you can get with their link, as well as pedometers that they gave out to the participants that came today to enforce that getting children physical active, as well as the parents is also. So we really appreciate them. And as I said, with the Wellness Initiative here at NIH, we're taking our own best advice. There are many, many resources throughout all the many institutes here at NIH. So we encourage you to use the resources that are in your own backyard. The next resource that we have is the NIH Fitness Centers, which also, if you're not aware of, about 2 weeks ago, you got a notice that there is a new wellness listserv, which you will get updates on it. The Fitness Center also gives lots of free classes, so you can try out Zumba, yoga, boot camp, and so forth. So there's many, many things that they provide to you so you can get physically active so that you can carry that on with your children as well. And there's also a great website that the Wellness Initiative has, and that's in your next slide, the Focus on You. And visit that, because there's also wonderful seminars, as Brenda had talked about. When you're waiting for your computer to turn on, there's some exercises that you can do, as well as every year in the fall there is a Wellness Day resource fair that occurs. So make sure you look out for that and take your child to work this year. The NIH Fitness Center, the NIH Child Care Board, and the National Institutes of Heart, Lung, and Blood will be doing 2 sessions where you can actually try out some of these activities with your child. So we do want to pass that on, and as I said, we have many, many resources here at NIH, and we just want to make sure that you're aware of those as you go on your journey to be a more fitter you and a more fit for your family.
Those are great resources, and that helps to remove an obstacle. Having such a great, robust, innovative wellness at the work site, it's right here for you. So it's a wonderful, wonderful resource to take advantage of. Great job, yeah. Okay, any last comments? I think our time is up. Resources, additional resources available to you. I appreciate your time here.
Brenda, I have one question.
Yes.
How do you get the child that doesn't want to exercise? How do you get them motivated to start trying to get a little more active?
That is really challenging, and so I think I would start with having a conversation with that child to find out what is it about exercise? It could be just the word, and having some education around that. Well, what are some things that you like to do? Well, let's take what you like to do and expand on that. And why do you like to do that? That would be, and I would do that simultaneously with an educational, here's how our bodies work, here's why it's important. I would show them some of the research, they can understand some of the research of what's going on with children their age, and just really making it personal. It's what we do for actually anybody at any age when they're sort of in the pre-contemplation stage and maybe not the preparation. How do we get them to move forward? The best strategy is lots of education and making it fun and rewarding and turning their self-efficacy around it. Maybe they've not had great experience in PE class. Maybe there are some other issues there too. So it's a multi-prong attach, but education is really the key for that particular individual. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.